here in a dream. I'm just stuck here in a dream.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of the Guns and Yoga podcast. My name is Wendy Hummel, and this week I will speak with Brady Pilster. He's the Director of Sales for Cordico. Cordico is the world leader in wellness technology for high-stress professions. Cordico's mobile wellness apps provide public safety professionals and their family members with on-demand access to relevant, trusted, and effective resources. Cordico serves hundreds of organizations with a range of self-assessments as well as continuously updated videos and guides on more than 60 behavioral health topics. As part of my agency's wellness initiative, we recently launched the Cordico app, and I believe it's such a valuable resource and tool for our agency members, their families, and retirees. I'm really excited to share this resource with everyone today. Welcome to the show, Brady.
Hey, thanks, Wendy. Appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have our listeners hear all about the Cordico app because, for years now, we've been trying to get it launched, and it finally happened a few months ago.
We're excited. We're fortunate to hear a lot of great stories from agencies that have launched it and seeing their wellness program, evolve. So that's really, really neat for us to hear, those stories.
Yeah. And why don't we just start from the beginning? Because, excuse me, before we got started, I was going through some things with you about Cordico. If you could tell everyone how Cordico started and how you yourself came to be a part of Cordico, because unlike a lot of the people that I typically have on my podcast, you are not a first responder yourself. So if you could just kind of go into how you got hooked up with Cordico and why you have such a passion to work with this population.
Yes, love to do that. So Cordico was founded by Dr. David Black. It's based out of Sacramento, California. And I have been in the public safety industry for over 24 plus years. And I kept on hearing the struggles that first responders were having with suicide, depression, trying to navigate through their EAP. It was broken. And I was down at a conference at Miami-Dade Police Chiefs Conference, and I just kind of was talking with the command staff level personnel that I was friends with, and he was kind of walking me through the process, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cumbersome, for an officer that's struggling to get help. So as my flight back from Miami to Salt Lake, I was like, I need to make a difference. I need to do something that's going to make it easier for first responders to get help they need and to kind of address the barriers of why it's a struggle to get the resources. So I reached out to Dr. Black. He didn't know me. I didn't know him, but I had read a little bit about what, they were doing there in Northern California for different agencies, and I was really impressed. And so, after a few conversations, I said, hey, I'm going to come out, I'm going to visit with you, and I'm going to take you to a police chief that really understands kind of technology, but understands the barriers well with officer wellness and with first responders. And so that's what we did. And we met with Chief John Carley, Vacaville Police Chief. He just actually retired this last week. And so we started collaborating and saying, okay, what are the barriers? What are the struggles? Why aren't they using the resources they currently have? And that kind of kick-started the whole process. And we really, really dived into, understanding why a first responder wouldn't use those resources. And I've worked with different companies in the technology of public safety, and they build a great product or a great solution, but it doesn't speak cop, fireman, or first responder. And so it's challenging for that first responder to use that. And so we really wanted to make sure that it would be easy and it would address the barriers, and so they would trust it and use it. So of course, confidentiality was, the big thing that we were really, really focusing on. So that's how kind of myself and Dr. Black, came together, was saying we really want to make a difference. And, with Chief Carley's help and other help to really, launch it. So spent quite a bit of time on, really on the back end of how is this going to work and making sure that the flow of the app would work for everybody and, all of public safety.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So this all started because you had a conversation with a police chief and you were just responding to a need, to a gap, is what it sounds like.
Absolutely. A lot of my friends are, first responders in public safety. And it just kind of stuck with me that with all of my relationships, around the country that I have, that I just, I wanted to make a difference. And that's really how the whole thing got started, was just my passion to help our first responders.
That's great. I love to hear that. And I really appreciate the backstory. So you mentioned Dr. Black. If you could kind of fill the listeners in for those who don't know who he is. His name is obviously affiliated with the Cordico app, but how did you know Dr. Black and know to call him, and what's his field of expertise?
Yeah, so did a little research on him and the company, on the website, and saw that he was involved with national sheriffs, their psychological, board there. He'd written white papers for ICP, and just knew, reading a little bit about him, that his passion for first responders, public safety, and that's kind of who I wanted to partner up with. It was somebody that had the same passion I did to help our, first responders.
So the two of you get together, you have this discussion, and you're meeting with this chief. And so then what happens next? So it sounds like the magic is happening
Yep.
in this meeting. And then how do you move forward, and how does Cordico launch this app?
Yeah, so we leave that meeting. He drops me back off at the airport. We look at each other and go, okay, how are we going to get this done? We know based on the feedback of what we need to do, but
Hmm.
how are we going to do this? And that I admire a lot of companies that take something from nothing to do it, because it is not easy. There is a lot of hard work. There's a lot of challenges finding the right people with the right skill sets to take something to nothing and to, take it to market to where it will really work. So there's a lot that goes into it. So it was a good, 8-month to a year process of really working out the kinks of what's going to work and what's not going to work.
I can imagine. And when did this conversation take place? So how long ago are
It
we
was in
talking?
2017. Yeah, 2017.
So really not that long ago.
No, it's been, working day and night, really, of putting things together and just working out all the bugs to make sure that it's flowing. Of course, the amazing feedback, from all the people that we were working with, of, again, what's going to work, what's not, because that was really important to me, to make sure, that it was easy to use, confidential. Another thing that really stuck with me based on the information I had is getting that resource to the spouse, the significant other, the retiree, their teammates in the home. And if they don't have any resource to get help, how are they going to help? They're just going to see the compressing down, the self-medicating, and that's just not good for the home life. And so I really want to make sure that these resources could be in their hands as well.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, because I feel like we don't do a very good job of remembering that sometimes. And when I say we, I mean the agencies themselves. It's like we have to figure out a way to make sure that we include the family members, the spouses, and even the retirees in all of the things that we're doing when it comes to wellness. So I applaud you guys for that. Why don't we take a step back, if you don't mind? I know about the app just because our agency launched it, and I'm a huge fan and supporter, and I'm really excited to see how this progresses with my agency. But if you could tell everybody who may be listening, and this is the first time they've ever heard of the Cordico app, what is it, and why should an agency get it? And if you've got it on your phone, what can you do with it?
Yeah, well, great question. So I like to use it, really, the terminology, as a platform. So it's a platform that's in an app that's on your phone. So if, we call the Cortico core technology, and that has the wellness toolkit. So information like Dr. Gottman and parenting tips for law enforcement, stress, moral injury. All of those resources are built in there. And it has the self-assessment. So there's 14 self-assessments that are in there that are key for somebody in the comfort of their own home or a safe space to take this test and get the feedback based on their answers to know where they stand. Nobody's telling them they're stressed out or they drink too much. They really know where they stand. And that's where change starts to happen. That's where they go, okay, I need to make a change because I'm not at the place where I need to be. So you have that. Then you have the Get Help Now section. So these are numbers that any time of day that they can reach out and call somebody. So, command staff's not mind readers. They don't know when everybody's struggling, but if they don't have the resources, the public safety individual to reach out, where are they going to go? And so that Get Help Now allows them to reach out, to be able to talk to somebody and get the help that they need. And so there's numerous resources in the Get Help Now that they can use, that's there. And then the great thing is think of like the local resources that you have, the peer support, the chaplain, there's a therapist finder in there. So all the agency therapists that are vetted for first responders that know how to deal with them, they're in there, because the biggest thing is when you're stressed out, you're not going to do all the legwork to find, is this a good therapist? Is this not? We have so many first responders going to therapists that really aren't trained to deal with them. And then they never go back. And that's something that we have to change. We have to make sure that they're going to, a culturally competent therapist that understands what the first responders are going with, so they can build that trust and relationship to get them the help they need to work through their struggles. So it's a platform that has everything locally, regionally, even statewide in there with our core technology. One of the other things that's a really, really big benefit, and a lot of people in the first responder community know, is Dr. Kevin Gilmartin, and we have exclusive rights for his videos, and we have content of his book in there. But the key is that just a push of a button, you can hear Dr. Gilmartin share his knowledge, and I've had so many people reach out to me and say, man, I feel like he's speaking to me, exactly what I'm going through. And so he's just an amazing person. And if you've had an opportunity to see him speak in person, you know what I'm talking about. He's just very engaging, and he really can help, with his knowledge and what he's, basically teaching in the videos and in his book. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we have.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because there really is so much. I mean, you've listed off a whole bunch of things, but really, I think people need to understand the depth that this app has, because one of the things, like I'm constantly still looking at it and finding new things, and you can really go down the rabbit hole. For instance, like especially in that the preloaded content that you guys have is very, it's excellent, and it really, I know you've told me this before when we talked, but it can not necessarily replace an in-service training, but it can definitely supplement. And what I really like about it, as I roll this out and talk to different people and groups of law enforcement and corrections and civilians in our agency, is I encourage people not just to look at the app and share it with their family, but supervisors, when they're in squad or they're meeting with people, why not bring up the app and pick a topic once a week and go through that with everyone and kind of walk through so that they know what's on the app if they haven't necessarily looked in a particular area. And just, it's a good forum for discussion too, because, we're trying to change culture here. We know that this isn't something that we're typically used to doing, is talking about burnout and taking self-assessment tools for anger management or alcoholism. So it's just such a good way to kind of bridge that gap and that barrier for people to kind of overcome that stigma.
Absolutely. And you bring up a couple things when you talk about training. How many times you go to a great training and, 6 months to a year, you're like, what was some of the topics of that training? That's a great thing, is because you can put in the app all the information about that training that they can lean back to and go into and say, okay, these were the topics. These were the 5 bullet points that I really need to to use in, my daily use at work. So I think that's a key, thing that everybody could use to have that. And then we've had a lot of peer support teams go into the wellness toolkit. Maybe they're working with somebody that's struggling and they're like, gosh, I don't know if I know exactly how to respond to that. Go back into the wellness toolkit, read up on that, and then go back to the struggling, first responder and start working with them. So there's numerous ways of the wellness toolkit, the self-assessments, all of those resources for be able to get help. We even have, sections in there for sleep, mindfulness, helpful apps. We really want to make it so easy. It's push of a button that it's just easy, and it helps people get the resources that they need.
Yes, and you've already mentioned this, but I would have to say one of my favorite, and I really shouldn't say that because there's so many things I like about the app, but one of the things that you mentioned already is the therapist vetting area. This isn't something that has gone live at our agency yet because we're still in the process, but it's really important, I think, for people who are listening to understand just how significant that is, because that is a barrier, is finding the right therapists or culturally competent therapists. And fortunately, at our agency, we're a little bit unique, and we have been told this by others, that we really do have a great EAP. We've got a few therapists that are culturally competent, that attend our peer support training, that train alongside of us. So that's unique. But as we know, when we're talking about EAPs, you have a limited amount of visits. And so in working in conjunction with them, working on that list of culturally competent therapists is huge, because we do the legwork is essentially what's happening. Our group of people on our team that are working, and just to give people an example of what that means. And I know this is something that we're working on the national front too. I know Sherry Martin with the FOP, the wellness coordinator, is working on this too. But here in Kansas, it's a priority for us, because we need to make sure that when we have a person listed on our site or on the app, that they want to work with first responders for the right reasons, that they're open to certain things. And an example is that they're okay with somebody coming in uniform with a gun, because some therapists may not want that to be the case. Site visits with the therapist, going to their office and seeing what it's like, and then inviting them to do a training about the culture of first responders, and encouraging them to do ride-alongs or go to squads and interact with the people that they'll be serving. Because I have heard numerous times, too many, unfortunately, of situations where it wasn't the right fit. But I also tell people too, trying to find the right therapist is kind of like dating. Sometimes you do have to try more than one. But when we talk about vetting, we really try to eliminate that legwork so that we can streamline the process, because we know how hard it is for first responders to reach out in the first place.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it's so important, in our therapist finder, that it really talks about, the profile. So there's the picture, there's the specialties, if there's co-payment, insurance, how far they are away, do they do in-person and teletherapy? Because think of some of these agencies, they're in rural areas, so they don't have the best, therapist available in their area. So teletherapy is really the only option. But when they can go through all of the profiles and look at those specialties, it's going to make it a little easier for them to say, that's the right therapist for me.
Absolutely. So you have shared with me before, and so have some of the other people who work for Cordico, some success stories. So would you mind just telling the listeners some of the success stories that you've shared with me in the past? Because I think that's really important for people to know how beneficial this app is.
Yeah, without going into, the agencies there, but, one of them that stands out is, I think he's a 15-year detective, and he had gone through an officer-involved shooting, and they were in the room with, I think, over 100 personnel, and they were going through kind of on the big screen of the therapists that were going to be in the app. and one of the therapists that came across, the room there, um, basically that detective stood up in front of everybody and said, I use that therapist. That therapist has really helped me through, some tough times. And the chief was floored. That happened, that culture is shifting where somebody feels comfortable enough to say that therapist has got me through, and I would recommend that therapist, so that was a cool story. On the fire side, the fire chief and the union president kind of never really met eye to eye on a lot of things. But when the app got rolled out to the department, the union president to all the new recruits would walk them through step by step the app and how to use it. And so there'd be all this group and basically thank the fire chief for getting it funded and making it a priority for the department. So it kind of brought the union president and the fire chief together, like they were on the same path with bringing wellness to that department and making sure, that the new recruits and everybody new hires were all using the app. Um, there's been a couple where we've had agencies that said, we can personally tell you that this has saved a life. And
That's amazing.
their conversations that they've had with those individuals, and we were just fortunate enough to, hear, some of that feedback that it provided the resources where somebody didn't go so far down a rabbit hole to say, okay, I can get help, still knowing that nobody's going to know. And they reached out to the resources that they felt comfortable with, to reach out. So yeah, we've just heard a lot of really cool stories. Best part of my job is interacting with agencies, sharing those type of success stories, seeing the culture shift, the saying it's okay not to be okay, and having that, in the agency and people feeling, safe. I think everybody can attest, the new hires, they need resources in their hands. They need to know how to navigate their careers. And we're seeing every agency that's rolling the Cordico app out, giving it to all the new hires and for recruiting and retention. They need the resources to navigate their career to be successful.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about recruiting and retention and how important and significant wellness, and in particular this app, can be for an agency when they're thinking about whether or not to get something like this. That is something that we do at our agency very early on in the Recruit Academy, whether it be for our detention personnel or commission, is we have them download the app. I go in there and I explain to them how to do it and why it's so beneficial so that they can start looking at this and accessing those resources from day one. So that's a really, really good point that you bring up. And just a couple of things that you mentioned too, the storytelling aspect of all of this that you were sharing. We've had stories like that I can attest to personally, where I'll go and talk to a group of people who 5 years ago would have never shared such personal things about themselves, and we're in there talking about therapists and the app and wellness, and people in front of all their coworkers openly sharing how they accessed a therapist and how helpful it was, and things like that you would have never heard people talk about necessarily in front of their coworkers.
Kind of
that's
taboo.
not what we do. Yeah, exactly. So it's so encouraging to have this culture shift kind of happening very slowly. And I think the great thing about the app is it's one of those resources that helps to bridge the gap. Like I said before, I mean, it's not the only thing I think an agency needs to do with wellness, but it's one of many tools that I think that can be offered because of the fact that it is anonymous. And I don't think that you can even truly put a number on how many people you're capturing and potentially helping, because you're never going to know all of those stories.
No, you're not. And I think one of the key things too is the individuals in the agencies that are rolling this out, that everybody knows their mission is just to help. Their mission is to be able to give the resources, to whether it's reach out and talk to somebody or whatever it is. But every agency has those individuals that everybody trusts, that their mission is to help everybody, because sometimes people get skeptical if it's coming from command staff. Do I have to do this? Do I have to use this resource? And if they're getting it rolled out by an officer wellness coordinator or somebody that, again, I go back to, everybody trusts, then those resources are really going to be used because they know it's that's the key thing. And going back to the confidentiality, we give a generic link and a generic password. There is no personal identification at all. So that is a key thing. And then we also house it on our IT and our servers. Those were two things that we've, in our discoveries, that we found out that were big barriers why somebody wouldn't use any confidential resources or any wellness resources. So we address those with giving that generic link and generic password, and then also have housing on our IT and our server, so it wasn't on the city or county IT.
Yeah, that's a really good point because, as a group, a lot of times, especially cops, they don't really trust very well when it comes to that stuff. So just making sure people understand that this isn't a way to track what you're doing, what you're accessing, that it's completely independent of whatever agency's IT system you're affiliated with. So that is a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. One thing too that I think is really great about the app, and maybe you can touch upon this, is even though they're customized and there's a lot of preloaded content that you already provide that you're constantly updating, but you can also personalize the app to whatever the needs of your agency are, and you can put in whatever you want, essentially, whoever that contact person is. So if you could kind of maybe get into some specifics on what you've seen some agencies have done and how they've kind of put their own unique brand on the app.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of touched on that. You guys have a really good EAP. So we have a section in there for EAP that will talk about a paragraph of what the EAP does. And then there's the phone number, and then there's a link, and they click on that link. So it takes them out of the app. One of the biggest things is that a lot of agencies have a lot of resources. And so one of our first agencies that came on board, the sheriff said, Brady, I have 15 different resources in 15 different places. And so it's really tough to find all of those. So now all of those resources in that county is in the app, and then if they need to go and put personal information, there's a link. It takes them out of the app because they will never, be tracked in the app. So having all of the county or city resources that are important that the city or county spent money on already now can be in the app. So it really makes it easier for the user to find all of those things, that's there. But, when you go back to taking, there's military support, in some of those agencies where they have a lot of, law enforcement officers or even firemen that are, we're in military. So there's that, support there. We have a lot of different additional resources. So locally, you guys, there's agencies that have a lot of great resources locally. So what are those entities that are there? But everybody's unique. You have some agencies that have a really robust peer support. Some of them don't have one at all. So they can, maybe a neighbor agency will share some peer support members, put them in their app. I know a lot of chaplains, they're very happy because now they feel like they have a portal for somebody to find them and feel safe to reach out, to the chaplain. So there's some agencies that have a lot. There might be an agency that only has one, but now there's an easy access for somebody to find, that chaplain that's there. But really, it's up to that agency department of what they want, on that local regional resource to reach out. And going back to training, I mean, there's a lot of training going on, and sometimes it's missed because it goes to an email. With the app, you can push a notification out that's highlighting this is what's going on today, or a week from now. There's a ticker down at the bottom that can be put there to keep everybody up to date, of what's going on. And I share, it doesn't all have to be about wellness. It's kind of like this, you're putting in all this key information that's just going to help them, their well-being, their job, whatever it may be. Put it in the app. Make it very easy for everybody to find the resources that you want them to see.
Yes, that's a good point. And you made me think about a conversation I had just last week with somebody about email versus accessing your phone. I think a lot of times people don't read all the emails that they get when it comes to, I think we get overwhelmed with all the information coming in. But the one thing that everybody has is a phone, is a smartphone.
Yes.
And I mean, go ahead.
It's in the palm of their hands. They're looking at
Yeah.
it, a lot during the day.
Right. And so it's just another tool for easy access, because something that they would miss on an email, which obviously you can't get the app on the email, but I think you know where I'm headed with this. It makes it really easy for people to access. And especially with, the younger generation, this is kind of how they've grown up. I know my kids don't know any different. And that's just kind of the way of the future. And unfortunately, which is something that I think we need to change, we are on our phones a little bit more than when we're interacting with each other, which I do think is an issue. But hopefully, if somebody is the type of person who isn't necessarily wanting to reach out with somebody in person, talk to a coworker, they at least have that information just in the privacy of their app.
Absolutely. And I can't tell you how many times, a peer support lead or an officer wellness coordinator comes to me and goes, gosh, I wish everybody could see this article or this short video. How can I get this out? And so now they have the opportunity to just, copy the link and push it out, and everybody, can see it. And it might not get to everybody, or everybody not open it up, but there's going to be people that are, and it could touch them and change their view, or just get them thinking about them being more healthy.
Definitely. And if maybe you could touch upon the push notification option, because sometimes people who download it question why they should actually allow that, because it does give you an option.
Yeah, I mean, it really just, the push notifications just allow that easy access of information. And I don't see a lot of agencies using it all the time, but it's important information, whether it's a great article, a video, or key information that just they can get real easy access, click on it, look at it, and go, okay, I'm updated, and move on in their day, instead of trying to sift through 50 emails. So it really just makes it easier for them just to go right to it, see what that, message is about, and then move on.
Yeah, and it's kind of in your face. It comes up and, hey, we think this is important. Look at this now.
Yeah. And again, I don't see a lot of agencies inundating with a ton of push notifications, just the important ones, that they can see.
Great. So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute here. So we've talked about this, how there's other wellness apps that are surfacing since Cordico has, at least since I've been aware of Cordico. If you were talking to like the leader of an agency, a decision maker, about why they need to get this app for their agency, because it is a financial investment, tell me why an agency should get Cordico. Sell me.
Yeah. Well, I hope that I never come across this sales. When we built this, it was truly for a solution. That was our whole goal, is we wanted to change the culture. We wanted to be able to provide a solution that would help somebody get the resources and that they needed to help them. That was the key thing. But what sets us apart is Dr. Black's team, of psychologists, especially in the wellness toolkit, that it's up to date content. It's not copy and pasted. I mean, so the challenges that we're going through in the last year and a half, we're addressing that, and we're putting that content and those resources, so it's not something that's outdated 5-10 years ago. So we're really doing that. We're working with the agencies to make sure that they're addressing all of their resources, whether it be local, statewide, that we're making sure that they get updated, is as well. I think our confidentiality is second to none, because that was such a priority, to make sure that it was anonymous so they feel safe that this trusted resource that they're using will be able to help them, and nobody knows that they're using it. So that's something that I think is really, really important. I mean, I can't say enough about Dr. Kevin Gilmartin, him choosing to be in the Cordico app and saying, I want to be a part of that. He's world renowned. I mean, I get emails and phone calls all over the world about what he's doing and how they can get his information. And so having those videos where, they're not out anywhere except in the Cordico app, I think is really, really key, because especially those new hires, you need to know how to navigate your career. And all of those videos are just, right there. Push a button. And then the key things, I mean, we didn't really touch about fitness, but just key fitness things that we've built in there, from, yoga to, injury prevention, to different workouts that we built. But then we know we have a lot of agencies that are really into fitness, their workouts of the day and their other things. And we're really, making that important to keep everybody up to date, on that. I can go on and on about the things that really set us apart, but I think the other key thing is our commitment to our customer. We call it a white glove service. We want to make sure that we're doing everything on the back end to make it easy. So when you're sending content, we're doing it. We're putting all of that information on the back end, so allowing them to do their job to make sure they're, out there working with, their personnel to keep them healthy. So we have a great team on the back end that, is really helping every step of the way to make sure the app is flowing and working properly and for everybody to use.
Yeah, and I can attest to that, because you guys are very responsive when it comes to customer service. So I do want to reiterate, though, what you said about Dr. Gilmartin. I meant to say this earlier. For those who don't know who he is, I mean, many do. I mean, he's kind of like the grandfather of emotional wellness.
Yes.
From 20 plus years ago. He was kind of the one who really first started talking about this, very ahead of his time, and in my opinion. And I think it's wonderful that it speaks volumes that he has affiliated with Cordico, because his book, everybody knows who he is when you talk about wellness. And we just recently started, and I know other agencies have been doing this for a long time, is we buy every recruit that comes through the academy one of his books, and we discuss it. And now it makes it even easier, because now we have another tool to say, hey, if you guys don't have time to read chapter 1 and 2, check out this brief video and listen to it that way, because not everybody likes to read these days. So it's just another way to get the information out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we are always looking at ways of pushing the envelope. I call them a community. So all of our clients are this community, and they're sharing different ways that they're using the app. And so we have the fortune to say, I think this will benefit all of the agencies, so nobody's reinventing the wheel. So, Wendy, I know that you're going to come up with some amazing things to use the app, and we're going to share that with other agencies. So it just makes their job and their life easier, because we're just making that pathway for everybody to get the help that they need, because everybody has different struggles. So you have to have those other, outlets and opportunities for their personal struggles, to get the help, that they need.
Yeah, well said. And Brady, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today and share all the wonderful resources that are available on the app. So for someone who is curious about Cordico, can you kind of tell us or point us in the right direction of how we can maybe get to the website? Are you on any social media platforms? And how would someone reach out to you if they're interested in bringing Cordico to their agency?
Yeah. So the website is just www.cordico.com. You can find me, Brady Pilster, on LinkedIn there. And just those ways are probably the easiest. I mean, my direct cell is 801-390-3834. Again, 801-390-3834. One of the things I want to leave you with is, when talking with these agencies leaders, we talk about the challenges and, think about all the gear that we have to put on all of our first responders, and it's expensive to put on that gear. But when we think about when you've got that first responder mentally struggling to do their job, what does all the gear matter? Because they can't do their job the right way. They can't do the job the way that they were trained. And we've got to get to a point where the mental well-being is that number one priority, because not only do we want them to do their job well and serve the community, but we want them to be happy people in their home. We want them to be happy when they retire. And we have to start focusing that mental wellness is the number one priority, because you can't go through life compressing it down and self-medicating. You can only do that for so long. And that's why I have such a passion for making sure that the spouses, the significant others, retirees, everybody involved, it's a team, and we're all helping each other and allowing, it's okay not to be okay. And let's get help so you can have a healthy career, and after your career, a healthy life.
You're absolutely right, because I've heard way too many times that people are going to do X, Y, and Z when they retire. And the whole point is that you don't want to wait till you retire. You want to live your best life right now. So, and I really believe that that's what Cordico is trying to do. So I appreciate you. I appreciate the company. I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. And that's it. I appreciate it.
Well, Wendy, you're just a pleasure, to work with, and love helping and supporting you in any way I can, and just appreciate you for your mission and your drive to help first responders, and what you're doing with this podcast and what you're doing with your agency. So any way I can help, love to do it.